Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle once again. It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 the Midlands, heard around the world on the iHeart Radio application. Download it today. It is free. Coming up on the program, William Qualkenbush in hour 2. We'll get rocking and rolling with that. Plus our website, Locked and Loaded. A great article up right now on the front page. Go check that out about Cade Klubnik. No time wasted. Clemson pouring into Cade Klubnik ahead of the kickoff between the Tigers and the Yellow Jackets on September the 5th, Labor Day evening over in Atlanta. 803-450-0086. That is a text line. That is a phone line. And again, you can be a part of this program anytime, any place, and of course, anywhere. Couple of quick notes here from the weekend, if you will. Number one, I have spent a considerable amount of time over the weekend watching videos from the Atlantic Coast Conference. Of course, I saw Pitt. I saw, who was at Florida State. And I'm going to try to go through the rest of those where the ACC network was on campus and going and visiting with these schools and programs. And, just a couple of takeaways that I have from what I saw so far. Number one, I think the thought process in this league, like listening to Roddy Jones, who's a frequent guest on this program, I think the expectations are possibly as high for this league, maybe even more so the Atlantic Division, because of the quarterback play heading into this season. And I've kind of touched on that a little bit here on the program over the course of the summer, heading into the fall. But, I think the reality is that we are in a sport, we are in the midst of a sport that is obviously driven by stellar quarterback play. Great quarterbacks make the biggest difference. And I think Clemson, your success that you've had in recent years is an absolute byproduct of what great quarterback play can deliver for you, right? Whether you're talking about Deshaun Watson, whether you're talking about Trevor Lawrence, great quarterback play can help you achieve goals that may have otherwise been seen as unprecedented previously. Nonetheless, you look at this league and the number of really good quarterbacks that are in the conference, and you can't help but think that there is going to be success. And so when we look at that top 25, so to speak, when you go through the top programs in college football heading into the 2022 season, and we averaged it out between the Atlantic Coast Conference and the SEC. And if you included Notre Dame, you may recall, if you push the ACC to 6 teams ranked, with Notre Dame checking in at 5 and Clemson checking in at 4, the average for the ACC was actually better than the SEC. And the SEC has number 1 Alabama and number 3 Georgia, because the middle tier teams, led by not necessarily incumbents, but like Slovich at Pittsburgh, for example. If you think about the situation there and the deal with his transfer and moving around from Southern Cal and now ending up at Pitt, with Slovis there replacing Kenny Pickett, there are high expectations around that program. With Devin Leary at NC State, there are high expectations around that program. All across the Atlantic Division of the ACC, expectations are through the roof this year. So we'll certainly, as we go through the And I understand that Slovis is in the Coastal Division, but the league as a whole, whether you're talking Jordan Travis at Florida State, Tyler Van Dyke at Miami, and you go on and on, Hartman, who we know is out for now, the expectations that you have for DJ Uiagalelei, I mean, this simply does not change, right? Because it is a incumbent. It is a new season. I mean, the expectations for quarterbacks do not change. And it's only, I might make the argument, it's gotten greater. It's gotten greater in recent memory. As the games opened up a little bit more, as teams have advanced to being a little bit more passing friendly, a little more prolific, as the game has changed to be a little bit, maybe you might even say fundamentally better for quarterbacks, maybe a little bit easier for quarterbacks, wide receivers, the freedom and movement that they have at the line of scrimmage, the penalties. Speaking of which, a change in penalties, one of the rules changes and several of the rule changes that came down over the past week or so, but one of them fairly significant, and that is the fact that now if you have a situation where you have a holding penalty on the defense, right? Defensive holding, then that means that it's an automatic first down. The other thing that is changed is targeting. So now if you get a targeting penalty, then you have to sit out, typically you have to sit out the second half of that next ball game. Well, not anymore. They've changed that up to where there can be a review. And if you're deemed that it was you were incorrectly penalized for targeting, then your second penalty, the first half of that next game, could be overturned. So more of a benefit to get a penalty of targeting penalty in the second half of a game, because maybe you get off by the end. But yeah, so there have been a couple of rule changes that have come in, and again, most notably, that change that's going to take place with the situation with a defensive holding penalty. It's going to be a 10-yard penalty, but will always carry an automatic first down, I should say. So even if it's, if you're 1st and 20, defensive holding, instead of being 1st and 10, it's going to be, well, technically in that sense, it would be 1st and 10, but I think you're picking up what I'm putting down. If it was, say, 1st and 25, and you got it, instead of being 1st and 15, it would be an automatic 1st and 10. So just some rule changes that have come along. But today, the hot topic out of the gates here on the program, who's the team that's going to falter? Like, who is the squad in the top 25 that you just don't believe in? Again, we can look at the numbers, but the top 5 in the polls, AP and coaches poll, are the same: Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame. And last week, we kind of went through and talked about the teams that we think could realistically make it into the college football playoff from the top 25. And I didn't think it was many, you might remember. But who's most likely to falter? Like, I think given the conversations around Clemson in the past 12 months, how they played a year ago, they're high on people's radars for being a team that's going to falter and find their way out of the college football playoff. They are a team that some people don't think are going to win the Atlantic Coast Conference, let alone the Atlantic Division. I mean, you could kind of go on, and there would be people out there that would target Clemson as one of the teams in the top 25 most likely to falter. Now, I might argue that they have as far as anybody, kind of given the expectations that people have for them. But who is that team that is most likely to really falter this year? And if I had to start in the top 5, I think of the top 5, it may very well be the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame in first-year head coach Marcus Freeman. Don't get me wrong. I like Coach Freeman. I like what he stands for. I like the way his program seems to be coming together, and the Chancey Stuckey's a part of that. I know that it is a proud tradition at Notre Dame. I know the expectations there are through the roof. But I think of the teams in the top 5, Notre Dame, to me, probably the most likely to fall out, and maybe just slightly ahead of where I would have Clemson. Now, some of you might be saying, pump the brakes, Swanee. What do you mean? You're putting the Tigers in on this list of teams that might falter? Yeah, I'll be honest. I know that the SEC gets a pass, an excuse. Everybody will talk about how difficult the road is in the SEC this year, but that's a yearly argument, and I don't know that in the SEC East this year it's necessarily true. And I don't buy into maybe Roddy Jones' theory that the Atlantic Division of the ACC might be the toughest division or the most solid division in college football. I don't know that I buy that. But as I said out of the gate, I think quarterback play, et cetera, is a big deal. And I think the ACC Atlantic will be a tougher nut to crack than maybe it has been in the past, unless Clemson's quarterback situation with DJ Uiagalelei lives up to the billing that he had a year ago. And if that happens, then he's the best quarterback in the league, and Clemson probably makes it look easy in the ACC. But you look at Notre Dame. Again, they open with Ohio State, nearly a surefire loss, right? Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, 1, 2, and 3. Nearly a surefire loss. Should beat Marshall, should beat Cal. At North Carolina, who's to say at this point what North Carolina is going to be? They are the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of college football. Depending on what team shows up offensively, defensively, I mean, they can be a top 20 team. Having a game at home against Notre Dame where the fans are going to show up and be loud and be hyped, and probably a night game, gives that a different complexion. I think Notre Dame's the better team, but if you told me the Fighting Irish are 2-2 entering their bye week on October 1st, not totally shocked. They got to take on number 25 BYU in Las Vegas. That's not easy. They face Stanford at home. They face UNLV at Syracuse. They've got number 4 Clemson versus Navy, Boston College, and then they take on a top 15 Southern Cal. Legitimate chance, looking at Notre Dame's schedule, that they lose to Ohio State, that they lose to Clemson, that they lose to Southern Cal. I mean, legitimate chances to do that. And also could lose to BYU and maybe North Carolina. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential losses there for the Fighting Irish. It's not to say that they won't cruise right on through to like a 12-2 season. But if you said, Swanee, in the top 5, which team do you think most likely stumbles? I think in that top 5, it's Notre Dame. Slightly ahead of Clemson. Slightly ahead of Georgia. I think Alabama and Ohio State are the most likely 2 teams that not necessarily go unscathed, but I think Alabama and Ohio State are the 2 most likely in that top 5 that don't falter, that are in the college football playoff. Now, how about 6 through 10? A&M, Utah, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Baylor. Now, you know what I said about Baylor last week. And I think that there's a lot of excitement around that Baylor program. I think that Dave Aranda is the perfect fit. And I think that Baylor last year probably punched a little above their weight class. including their victory over Oklahoma State. I think they punched a little high. And I think that they are probably just ahead of Oklahoma for me in that next tier, the most likely to stumble. The reason I bring up Oklahoma is the changeover with Brent Venables. And you know how I feel about Brent Venables. But I think the changeover with Brent Venables is something to consider. I think also the uncertainty right now at quarterback also a little uncomfortable for me. And really, last but not least, you know, when you have the complete changeover that program had, and now you've lost a wide receivers coach because of some racial issues, racial remarks that he made. I mean, at this point, I love Brent Venables. Love this man. Like, literally, after Clemson won the national title against Alabama, I took off the media cap and I put on the Clemson graduate cap, and I thanked him for everything he'd done for our school right there, middle of the field. He deserved that. He deserves this opportunity. But in that second tier, I think they're the second most likely to drop, quite frankly. I mean, just take a look at Baylor's schedule real quick. They got Iowa State on September 24th on the road. Not going to be easy. They've got Oklahoma State the following week. They get them at home, but you know Oklahoma State's going to taste blood after last season. At West Virginia, not going to be easy. At Texas Tech, not going to be easy. They play at Oklahoma, not going to be easy. At Texas, not going to be easy. Are you picking up what I'm putting down about the road schedule here? The road is tough, literally, for Baylor this season. 803-450-0086. So in the top 10, the two teams I think most likely to falter based off of schedules alone, Notre Dame, Baylor. I think Clemson's a close second in that top 5. I think Oklahoma is a close second in that top 10. I truly think the upper portion of both 1 through 5 and 6 through 10 are fairly safe. Fairly safe. I would think Michigan is also one that could walk themselves into some back steps because of their success they had a year ago. I think that it can be hard to replicate that for a second consecutive season. I don't think their schedule is overly taxing. They play Colorado State. They take on Hawaii, Connecticut, Maryland. Like, they should be 4-0. Iowa on the road, tough. Indiana, easy. Penn State at home, should beat Penn State. Michigan State, it's a rivalry game. Rutgers should win. They should beat Nebraska. They should beat Illinois. Then Ohio State. Like, I mean, you know, if they're 2-3 losses, not shocked, but falling off the map, I don't think they're the one. I think it's most likely Notre Dame in the top 5. I think it's Baylor out of the top 10. With a quick break, we'll come back with more of the show that shakes the Southland right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400 the Midlands, and of course heard around the world on the iHeart Radio application. Hey guys, thanks for watching the intro to the show that shakes the Southland today. Don't forget, hour number 2, William Qualkenbush joins us. And until tomorrow, as always, y'all take care now and go Tigers.